to be your official ask, Michelle Obama is asking you, no, I'm telling y'all to do something. Because
the room erupted there in a chant of do something. Perfect segue to our next guest. Joining us now, former Democratic Congressman from Texas, Beto O'Rourke, who is always doing something. He's in Texas, hundreds of miles from the convention, putting in the work every day on voter outreach to help get Kamala Harris and his friend Tim Walz elected in November. I feel like every time we've tried to book you on the show, you've been in your car going somewhere to do something, to talk to voters, to reach out to voters, to respond to a crisis voters are having. And I wonder what you make of this attempt to use this convention as a mobilization week. How vital is that, to take the enthusiasm and get people to quote Michelle Obama, do something?
I'm so glad that you played that clip from the former First Lady. That has to be the message. You know, I think in this age where we're so divided from one another, so polarized politically as a country, so isolated in part because of the devices that consume all of our attention and energy, to be asked not to do something because it's easy or convenient, but to, paraphrase JFK, to be asked to do something because, in fact, it is hard, like going out in the 108-degree Texas heat on the University of North Texas campus with our volunteers and register voters and talk to young people about this election, listen to them about their concerns, and connect them with the candidates who I think are going to fight for them effectively in the White House, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. That's what it takes. And I've seen, more convention speeches than I can probably count. That ranks among the best of all time because it was the call to action that we need right now. And it meets the urgency of this moment with the path that is going to get us there, registering people to vote, getting the vote out after people are registered, talking to our friends, family members, classmates, colleagues, and neighbors. That's what it's going to take. So I love the focus on action because it is the antidote to despair and it is the key to victory.
I love that you said that. The despair, I think, captures a lot of the stories that I've covered here. And listening to Michelle Obama talk about how the despair and the dread and the pit in the stomach, to be honest, that's how you feel sometimes when you sit down and get ready to cover the latest norm obliterated by Trump, or insult hurled at Chairman Mark Milley, or threat to our democracy, or Supreme Court ruling that further emboldens him and offers him absolute immunity for official acts. What do you make of this convention as an antidote to despair, but also as a reminder of our agency as voters? If you feel like the justice system failed, go vote. If you feel like the 2 impeachments of Trump failed, go vote. Putting it back in the hands of the voters to do something meaningful in November.
Absolutely. Get us off the sidelines, put us into the game, remind us of the agency that each of us possesses in this democracy. It's both a freedom, it's an opportunity, but it's also somewhat of a burden that you don't have in Saudi Arabia or in Russia or Iran or North Korea or so much of the rest of the world right now, but a burden that we happily shoulder today because it gives us a chance to decide our own destiny, and only because of those who preceded us, going back to the revolution at Lexington and Concord up through Appomattox in 1865 to 1965 when John Lewis leads that march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge to secure the right to vote for everyone in this country, regardless of your race, your religion, your ethnicity, your country of national origin, creating the first true multinational democracy in American history, or multi-ethnic democracy, a real democracy of the people. Those who preceded us with their blood, sweat, and tears, and in many cases their lives, gave us this extraordinary inheritance. And what we do with it, whether we squander it or whether we expand it, which is really the choice that we have in selection, that's going to define this generation for eternity, and certainly in the eyes of our kids and our grandkids. So, no pressure, but we can't afford to mess this one up. And I love that instead of meeting that with fear or anxiety, we meet it with this bold, cool confidence that Michelle Obama brought to the convention last night. And then, of course, President Barack Obama, just one of the greatest orators of my lifetime, who delivered the speech that we needed to hear last night. I was on a high by the end of the second night of the convention and really excited about what we're going to hear tonight.
One more thing about the Obamas, and then I want to ask you about your friend, Governor Walz. He addressed some of what you're talking about. You mentioned people staring at their devices. He said, we're obsessed and attached to fleeting things, fame, money, likes. And then he tied it to loneliness, which I think only accelerated after COVID, but has been skillfully exploited by Donald Trump. That loneliness, that grievance. And I thought it was interesting that his own former press secretary, Stephanie Grisham, talked about his hatred for his own supporters, who she said he refers to as basement dwellers. What did you make of the Obamas sort of speaking to the isolation as one of the tools of the wannabe autocrats?
It's definitely a crisis of this time. And I'm sure I'm speaking for millions of parents out there. Amy and I are raising a 17, a 16, and a 13-year-old. And it is a daily, if not hourly, challenge to make sure that we're connected, eye to eye, looking at one another when we talk to each other, having these bonds that I probably took for granted growing up in a pre-digital age, as did you, but is a really serious concern right now. Interestingly, when I'm on all these college campuses, I was at Texas A&M today and then at Houston Community College just before joining you. One of the first questions I get from young people that were signing up to get registered to vote is, where do I find the facts? And it's a funny question because when I was growing up, it was the El Paso Times, it was the nightly newscast, it was McNeil Lehrer on PBS, whatever my folks were watching. For young people today, they don't have newspaper subscriptions. They're not watching broadcast TV. Unfortunately, they may not be watching you either. They're consuming this stuff off of TikTok and Instagram and other social media platforms. And they can be forgiven for being overwhelmed by that and not knowing what's real. Showing up in person, connecting with people, having conversations about the future of this country. I know it's not easy. I know it's not digital. I know it's not convenient, but I think that's where the action is. And that's where we bring people back together again and defeat this isolationism, which truly is a breeding ground for extremism for those who get led down the wrong path. And so this convention literally physically is the embodiment of people coming together. And I think that's why you see so many smiles on so many faces, so much joy in the room. Now we got to go out there into our home communities and bring that message and that joy and those conversations to people where they are.
I feel you times a million on the daily, hourly struggles to keep our kids connected to us and not what tempts them on their screens. Enter Tim Walz. I spoke to one of his students about the impact he had on the classroom, and it was just what you're talking about. He said one of the homework assignments was not to go home alone and read a book for hours and hours, but to come back to the classroom with an article about the world in which they live. He said it expanded the world of their small town. Tell me what you think we'll hear tonight from your friend, Governor Tim Walz.
I think the more personal, the closer it is to his life and experiences, the more we hear him in his own words, I think the deeper the connection that this guy is going to make. One of the reasons I consider him a good friend, and probably so many of my colleagues with whom I served along with Tim Walz consider him a friend, is he wasn't one of these guys consumed by his device. He wasn't skipping into the committee hearing to give his speech and then bouncing out to get on cable TV or post something on social media. He'd stay the full meeting. He's a real guy having real conversations about real things going on in his life. And I think there's an incredible exceptionalism to his kind of service. And it's really a wonderful story about America, that a guy who just keeps his head down, does the work, gets things done for those he's supposed to serve, like veterans for whom he delivered on the VA committee, is now elevated to this position of prominence as the vice presidential nominee. So I'd love to hear more about his story, his ethic, how he got here. And also those things that kind of defy the typical political course: social studies teacher, lunchroom monitor, football coach who takes his team to the state championship, 24 years in the Army National Guard, a loving husband and a wonderful dad who you cannot get to stop talking about his kids because he's so proud of them. So I just love that Walz is on the ticket, and I think he's such a big boost to our chances to win the White House in November.